Welcome back everybody to another episode of our weekly Moto News Roundup, where this time round we've got new bikes from BMW, Kawasaki, Yamaha and a crazy new cruiser from CHIGEE Motor. Then we've got our comment of the week monthly winner, more news on Honda's e-compressor and an incredible looking competition from Quadlock. Plus there's industry news from BMW and KTM and Lightlock, the latest monthly sales figures from the UK. But before we get underway, a massive thanks to Break Free for supporting the channel and sponsoring our news coverage. And if you've ever wondered about this particular product, then of course there are links down in the description below. But let's kick off with these renders from Motorrad Online, showing what they think the next generation of BMW GS could look like. You see, they're saying if you look at BMW's historical product cycles for this particular bike, then a new 1350 version could be on the way for 2028, which could mean an announcement as early as late 2027. That's what's led them to speculate. I would say undoubtedly if that's the case, then it will already be in development at BMW. And so Motorrad put together their best guess of what we might see from a technical perspective. Now, undoubtedly a big update would include more capacity. That's almost always been the case with the major milestones for the GS. And so at the moment, the 1300 makes 145 horsepower peak and 149 Newton meters of peak torque. Very healthy, it's got to be said, in terms of that torque figure. It has such a usable spread in the mid-range, but maybe a little bit extra capacity might help to close that gap in terms of peak power up to some of the competition like the Ducati Multistrada V4 and the KTM 1390. Then they also speculate that with this 1300 version, BMW made a bit of a decision to go down quite a sporty and focused route with it, with a bit of a weight saving, a different feel to the chassis. But maybe those new riding dynamics weren't entirely well received by BMW customers, and so potentially there could be a look to make it a little more, comfort and touring focused again, like previous iterations like the 1250 or 1200. Personally though, having seen a lot of the sales figures here in the UK, I wouldn't say the 1300 GS is necessarily struggling, but a little bit of food for thought all the same. And I will say there's quite a few different potential tweaks to the visuals that they've laid out in the article, so do check it out if you want to see all those different renders. In the meantime though, the baby sibling to the 1300, the new 450 GS, is now available in the UK after a bit of a wait since it was fully unveiled at the back end of 2025. Of course, the middleweight adventure segment has become super competitive over the past couple of years, with new bikes from Enfield like the Himalayan 450, the CF Moto 450 MT, KTM's 390s, Kawasaki's new KLE, and so on. But with a new parallel twin making 48 horsepower, a slender chassis as well at 178 kilograms, along with a bit of the image of the big GS. Well, I'm sure BMW are hoping that this new 450 will be a big success. I will say though, it's not the cheapest of the bunch by any stretch. It starts at $6,990, and of course it works its way up with the more visually interesting variants. But perhaps if you like the way it rides, then it could well be worth it, and you can now find out for yourself with demo rides already available at UK dealers. So interested to hear your thoughts in the comments if anyone has been able to swing a leg over one. On top of that, Kawasaki have also confirmed this week that there's going to be a new little air-cooled retro for the US market, and from a price perspective it does look like one heck of a deal. It is called the W175 LTD, and while it probably won't knock your socks off with a little 177cc single that makes about 13 horsepower peak, well, it does look cool, and also it should be super easy to ride with a low seat height that's well under 800mm. So potentially a great little city commuter, but I think the biggest appeal of this particular bike will undoubtedly be the price, with it selling for just $2,999. Now granted, it's just for this LTD or limited version, which is fairly simple in the finish. You've got kind of blacked out hardware and cast aluminium wheels, so nowhere near as snazzy as the W230 that we're getting in the UK and Europe. But look, for reference, that 230, it costs £4,654. But if you convert that $2,999 into pounds as well, well, it comes in at about $2,250. So you can get a 175 for effectively less than half that of a 230, which just seems like an absolute bargain for such a great looking little bike. They've also been making waves this week in the dirt bike world though, with the reintroduction of a larger capacity two-stroke. The KX327 and 327X both get a 327cc two-stroke single, which is said to be their first in over 20 years. And while a two-stroke single might seem fairly old hat, well, they have dragged it up to current day standards with fuel injection, electric start, power modes, and connectivity. Now, apparently, bikes will be available in the UK from January 2027. No exact price as of yet, whereas in the US, they're saying late 2026 with prices between sort of $9,000 and $10,000. Keeping with the US theme this week, though, well, there's also been a new version of the Yamaha R9 announced just for the US in this particular colorway, and it's got to be said, it looks absolutely brilliant. You see, in the UK, we get the usual black or blue, plus, to be fair, at the moment, you can get that really nice looking anniversary white and red, but this one in matte phantom blue and fluo red, well, I just think it's something different for Yamaha, and it's very much appreciated. It's a bit of a throwback to maybe a slightly 90s look, and so while there's no word yet, I definitely hope that this one makes it to other markets as well. Over to Cycle World this week though, and they report on what has to be one of the most unusual cruisers on the market from Chinese brand CHIGEE Motor. It's called the SRV 600, which firstly gets a 600cc V4, which I think is pretty much unheard of in terms of the capacity and configuration on the cruiser market. On top of that though, they've also just filed some paperwork in China for an automatic version, but where you can override with buttons on the switchgear, and so I'd imagine it's something pretty similar to Yamaha's AMT or automated manual transmission. Interestingly though, Cycle World point out that unlike other implementations where you still have a foot control for the rear brake, well, this one appears to have a lever on the left bar, and it's almost certainly not a clutch lever because they use a mechanical cable pulled clutch on the manual version, yet this one has a fluid reservoir, so it looks like, well, it almost certainly operates the rear brake. So a cruiser style bike with like a peppy, one assumes fairly revvy 600 V4 engine, but also a riding experience that's kind of equivalent to a twist and go scooter. Is it super convenient or absolute sacrilege? Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Anyway, it's time for our comment of the week, where I pick the best comment from the last episode, and then at the end of the month I pick my favourite to win a brake-free device of your choice. Last week we looked at the new Ducati Centenary paint jobs, and Ashwin Rags said I didn't see the V-Strom 800 in the yellow Desert X until you pointed it out, but thanks for ruining it for me. You're absolutely welcome. But this month, I think I'm going to go for Jared Moto for his comment saying that Harley need to put a fuel gauge on the new Sportster, which is set to come out in 2027. And I'd agree, it absolutely bugs the hell out of me that we've got bikes now that can almost ride themselves, and yet some manufacturers are still putting out bikes without even a fuel gauge. So congrats to Jared. We'll be in touch with the details about how we'll get our prize out to you. Anyway, on to MCN this week, and they say that Honda might well expand their range of e-compressor powered bikes with more layouts potentially in the future. They're currently working on a V3 with forced induction in order to boost performance. They say it's going to give the 900 V3 performance more like a 1200, but a new patent recently emerged which lists a whole bunch of other potential applications. So it mentions a 2-cylinder engine with 1 cylinder each in the front and rear banks, so a V-twin, a 4-cylinder engine with 2 cylinders in each of the front and rear banks, so a V4, 5 cylinders with 3 up front and 2 in the back, a 6-cylinder with 3 cylinders in the front and back as well. And so look, perhaps they're just covering all their bases from a patent perspective by listing every possible application, or maybe they really do think that forced induction is the way forward and that's their future roadmap. Anyway, a quick heads up that our partners at Quadlock have just kicked off an awesome looking competition that you may well want to enter. It's called Real Epic, a new content content series that showcases the best adventures on two wheels. And if you submit your own ride with a picture or video, along with 100 words on what riding means to you personally, then you could be in with the chance of winning a $4,000 adventure fund. The idea is you can put that towards your next epic ride. So head to the Quadlock website or their Instagram to find out more about how to enter. I think it ends on July the 31st, so there's a little bit of time to get your entry in. But next, in industry news, it looks like KTM are hoping to get back on track over the next year or two, in part by hiring some top talent in the form of BMW Motorrad's head of development, Christoph Lischka. You see, he's now been announced as the CPTO at KTM, so Chief Product and Technology Officer, which is a slightly different name, maybe a bit of a step up, but ultimately the same idea of looking at what bikes they'll make in future and how they'll make them. So it could be very interesting to see if this starts to influence the direction of future KTMs. You never know, a Super Duke with a Boxer Twin, for example, could it happen? Maybe not, but it's noteworthy all the same, because this isn't the first hire they've made in the past couple of months from BMW. You see, they also snapped up Stefan Reif as their CCO, or Chief Commercial Officer, and yeah, he's also come in directly from a similar role again, a BMW Motorrad. So certainly KTM are looking for a bit of stability after a tough few years, and maybe this is the plan to get there, just to hire half of BMW. Closer to home though, we've got a great success story on our hands with our partners at Lightlock, who've just been included again in the Sunday Times list of the UK's top 100 fastest growing companies. It's their second year in a row, so a massive congrats to the team at Lightlock. And from my perspective, I think you can put a lot of their success down to the fact that they just try to make really simple, effective products that just do the job. Specifically, the X1 and X3 locks are what we use here. They're angle grinder resistant, and so it makes them extremely difficult and time intensive to cut, and therefore your bike much harder to nick. And I'm sure word of mouth gets around about just how good they are. As always, links in the description to their brilliant products, but more so, again, a big congratulations to them for making that list. Now, the MCIA just reported their latest industry figures for May 2026, and the picture continues to look good versus 2025, with sales up significantly, specifically for the motorcycle segment. They also report on other two-wheelers, of course, but specifically for motorcycles, May was up 15.7% versus May 2025, and that leaves year-to-date figures up 16.5% across the market. Digging in a little deeper though, well, there were plenty of familiar faces amongst the top-selling models, such as I say, the R1300 GS being the best-selling adventure bike, the R1300 RT being the best-selling tourer, but also the GB350S from Honda is the best-selling retro again after a bit of a on-off battle with the BSA 350 Bantam. Both of them really affordable bikes and seem to be trading places as the best-selling retro over the past year or so. But I will say though, there's a bit of a new entry if you start to look at the market broken down by capacity, with it looking like the new Trident 800 has really been doing the job for Triumph, with it being the bestseller in May for bikes between 750 and 1000 cc. So yeah, good news for Triumph, and again, it's not a big surprise to see that one doing so well, because it's a really capable all-rounder, and also again at a very tempting price point. I also spotted this week though an interesting read from Motorrad Online again, which, as opposed to looking at just the monthly data, actually looks at the last 25 years. You see, they've managed somehow to get hold of annual data for the top 10 manufacturers, and it is kind of cool to see the broader picture for once, with a few different stories popping up just from this one particular line chart. I mean, maybe it's no big surprise to see BMW absolutely dominating in their home market, but it's got to be said, it wasn't always the case, with Suzuki, Honda and Yamaha all outselling them back in 2000 when the data starts, but also Kawasaki sitting not that far behind. All of them though suffered a dip over this particular period, with Honda recovering the best in the past 5 years or so, and Motorrad Online put this down to the introduction recently of more affordable models, so things like the 750 Hornet and the Transalp. KTM and Harley on the other hand, well, they've had periods of relative success in the middle there, but only to die off again recently, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out why. Triumph and Ducati Ducati, on the other hand, well, they've not necessarily set the world alight, but you've got to say it's been fairly slow and steady growth and a fairly stable performance over that, relatively long time span. So plenty to pick apart from that particular article. And again, do check it out if you want all the details. As always though, also let me know what you think of the rest of the stories this week. I'll also put a playlist on the screen now where you can catch up with all of our videos from this week, including a comparison of the KTM 990 RCR and the 990 Duke R, a review of the CF Moto 1000 MTX, which I thoroughly enjoyed putting together, and also a comparison of Honda's CB1000 Hornet and the Kawasaki Z1100. Do hit subscribe for more of the latest motorcycle news and reviews like this as well, right here on MOTOBOB. A massive thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next video.